Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Joker Rogers. Today we begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where dozens of people have been killed after armed men raided a gold mine in Djougou, the eastern Ituri province. Local officials say 29 bodies had been retrieved from the mine, and among the dead was a 4-month-old baby. But civil society leaders estimate that between 30 and 50 people were killed. One said the local hospital had been overwhelmed by the number of victims. In a statement, the Ministry of Communication is blaming the Codeco militia, which has built a reputation for attacking civilian encampments. The Codeco group has previously been accused of carrying out raids against civilians in recent months and killing at least a dozen people at a church in March and another 60 in February. A former senior Rwandan official has gone on trial in Paris accused of complicity in the African nation's genocide, the most senior figure yet to face justice in France over the 1994 massacres. The trial of Laurent, which opened on Monday, is expected to last 2 months and feature more than 100 witnesses, including survivors from Rwanda who have flown over or will appear via video conference. The case against him is the fourth from Rwandan genocide to come to court in France, which had long been under pressure from activists to act against suspected perpetrators who had taken refuge on French soil. An estimated 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus perished in 100 days of slaughter in 1994, in which Hutu militiamen massacred Tutsis, taking cover in churches and schools. Standing trial on charges of genocide, complicity in genocide and in crimes against humanity. The 78-year-old Laurent still faces a life sentence if convicted eventually. He, however, denies the charges and refutes any involvement in the killings. To health matters, South Sudan's health ministry has declared a cholera outbreak in BURKINA County in the northern oil-producing Unity State. A total of 31 cases, including 1 death, has been reported from BURKINA and Bintui camp for the internally displaced persons. Health officials say samples taken to the National Public Health Laboratory in the capital, Juba, has returned positive tests. In South Sudan, the cholera risk is typically high during the rainy season that starts from May to the end of October. Displaced people in Unity State who live in congested areas where water sources are highly contaminated. According to the ministry, the latest outbreak is the first to be reported since 2017, where more than 28,000 people were infected and 644 killed by the waterborne disease. In the meantime, authorities in Mozambique say over 14,000 HIV patients have abandoned antiretroviral therapy in the first 3 months of the year in the central province of Zambezia. According to Dr. Chinaze Verisimo, the provincial head of the HIV program in the region, says male patients are no longer taking the drugs. He blames stigma and prejudice associated with HIV for the high rate of defaulters, adding that health officials will be delivering medicines at home to patients who are unable to go to health units, whether out of sickness or for fear of being stigmatized. Over 300,000 patients receive HIV antiretroviral care in Zambezia province. A trifecta of the ongoing effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, the newly felt effects of the Russia-Ukraine war, and the climate-related challenges are severely impacting efforts to sustain peace and reduce poverty and inequality on the African continent. And that's according to the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP. UNDP anticipates that about 100 million Africans who could afford sustainable energy before the COVID-19 outbreak will return to unsustainable sources as the cost of fuel becomes more expensive. It also stresses that particularly in countries with upcoming elections where the electoral environment is already quite emotional could lead to additional social pressure.
This is an unprecedented crisis for the continent. It's unprecedented because the continent is facing a trifecta, the ongoing effects of the COVID pandemic, the newly felt effects of the Russia-Ukraine war, and thirdly, the climate-related challenges and pressures. The global inflation that's being imported into African economies, because Africa is so dependent on imports for food, fuel, medicines, and consumer durables, we are going to see tensions. Whether or not this would spill over into violent protests is unclear, but what history, particularly recent history, has taught us is that this is a distinct possibility. We were hoping to see a bounce back from the poverty challenges that we had experienced during COVID, an estimated 50 million Africans being pushed back into extreme poverty. It's going to be much more difficult for them to climb out of poverty as the cost of fuel becomes more expensive and energy prices don't fall in African countries. We're going to see millions of households going back to unsustainable energy sources. And this, in many fragile environments in particular, looking at places like the Sahel, we're going to see a lot more deforestation and a rollback of significant progress that had been made in the greening of the Sahel.
We have never experienced greater pressure and challenge on our ability to sustain peace and development on a healthy planet as we experience today. A global pandemic that upended the world and changed it forever. We've seen resulting from that, but also in terms of pre-existing conditions, rise in poverty and inequality. We saw how COVID-19 complicated the effort to maintain or to overcome the insecurity there that's created by many forces, including violent extremism. And the impact of this, the consequences affecting lives and livelihoods, but also creating immense discontent among the population, which has led to a regression in democracy.
Somali President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo has formally announced his candidacy for a second term in the presidential elections due on May the 15th. He said he was pursuing a second term in response to the Somali people's call and to continue a path of progress and development. His first constitutional mandate ended in February last year, but he stayed on amid a delay in the holding of parliamentary elections. In Somalia, MPs are chosen by delegates appointed by clan elders and members of civil society selected by regional state officials. The MPs then vote for a president who leads the country. Mr. Farmajo faces stiff competition from several candidates, including 2 former presidents. Let's get more on politics in Somalia. Joining us now is Oluseyi Adeyemo, Public Affairs Analyst. Thank you so much for joining us today on Network Africa.
Thank you so much for having me, Joker. Glad to be here.
So what do you make of President Abdullahi Farmajo's announcement to vie for president after staying on amid the delay in holding parliamentary polls in the country?
Okay, again, a lot of people have said that during his tenure, Somalia have enjoyed some level of progress. It's unfortunate because some of us believe that when we are doing such comparison, we're comparing it to 15, 20 years ago. I mean, it's not like Somalia have gotten out of poverty. They're still at the very, very low part of the table. They are regarded as probably one of the poorest countries in the world. Unfortunately, the country is, predominantly funded by foreign aid. And so, yes, a lot of Somalians see Mohamed Abdullahi as their legitimate leader because, strangely, that's usually not the case in Africa. You have a case where somebody from another, ethnic group coming up after 2 different ethnic groups have been there. And the major problem of Somalia is the fact that they have in most countries in Nigeria, a situation where those who are from a particular ethnic group are the ones who rule the nation. They have everything apportioned to themselves. And obviously, like we have in most African countries, you have the issue of corruption. So yes, it might be one that will bring progress to the country because a lot of people have said maybe some progress has been made, in course of this administration. So it might bring progress, but again, we will have preferred that they have done better, during this time.
So now that a date has been set, May the 15th, that's just next week, it's coming after the election was postponed by more than a year because of a power struggle between the president and the Prime Minister, Mohamed Hussein Rubble. Are you confident that this election will help resolve the political issues?
Confident, maybe not, but at least to some extent, because it's not just with the Prime Minister. He also had problem with the Speaker of the Senate. So there have been a lot of problems there. All of this are strung around the fact that there is corruption. He's not done as well as one would have expected because he was Prime Minister and it was one that a lot of people believed in and thought by now will have taken the country to an higher step compared to where they are today. So yes, it is believed that now that the election of the Senate or the parliamentary election is done, and we're looking forward to next week, 15th specifically of May, for the election we would be able to see some level of stability in the political space in Somalia. That is our expectation. I will not want to give a guarantee, standing here, because Africa and, as a continent, we've not done too well in the way we have managed our affairs because we've not shown fairness and we've not shown thorough commitment to the people in the way we conduct our affairs.
So the timing of this election is quite interesting because this now ensures Somalia does not miss out on the $400 million financial package from the IMF. It was set to expire unless a new administration is in place by the 17th of May, rather. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, some of us feel that we should not continue to leave on hands out. I guess that was why they ensured that this election took place before the expiration of what was given that, by the superpowers. America has said, look, the reason why we're not doing enough as regards the security of us moving in and ensuring that we take care of the militia, the Al-Qaeda, and all of that, because this election has not been done. So yes, I believe that is why everything has to be done to ensure that the deadline was met. But again, as an African, I still feel that we can do better than waiting for support or hands out from the rest of the world.
Right, Oluseyi Adeyemo, Public Affairs Analyst, thank you for your time today on Network Africa. The African Union has condemned Sunday's attack that killed 11 Egyptian soldiers in the Sinai Peninsula. In a tweet, AU Commission Chairperson Musa Faki Mahamat condemned in the strongest terms the terrorist attack in the area. The Egyptian government said the attack targeted a water pumping station. For years, Egypt has battled militants in Sinai province. The Islamic State group said it carried out Sunday's attack. The Russian invasion of Ukraine has impacted the world, even down to Africa, where analysts say the continent is facing a looming food shortage as a result of the war and the sanctions on Russia. But for countries like Burundi, this is not an insurmountable challenge. The Nigerian ambassador to the country, Elijah Onyegba, says while the country is already experiencing a major increase in food and fuel prices, it's pretty much self-sufficient.
The Russia-Ukraine crisis has basically been a major challenge to quite a lot of African countries. A lot of African countries import wheat, I think, and of course crude oil from Russia. Basically what has happened is that we've witnessed about 25% increase here in the price of petroleum products, and I'm sure that's also as a result of this issue, because basically since the Russians have been under sanctions, it means that their oil is not sold in the markets. What that means is that the demand for crude oil will obviously go above supply, and simple economics means that price will go up. So the end product is actually 25% increase. The price of petroleum products, fuel, for example, moved from 2,450 Burundian franc to about 3,200 Burundian franc, equivalent of about 600 naira in Nigeria or thereabouts. So I haven't seen the latest inflation figures. Last month in March here in Burundi was about 12.8% or thereabout. But I'm sure by the time they release the April figures, which I'm sure will come out like next week or thereabouts, I'm sure the impact of that will be felt, because it's a ratchet effect. Once the price of petroleum products goes up, it also has effects in other areas. On the food side, you would expect that if Burundi actually imports the likes of wheat from either Ukraine or Russia, what you're going to find is that, of course, bread and all of these things, the prices will go up.
And authorities in Burkina Faso are on a hunt for several prison inmates who were freed by militants during an overnight attack on a jail in the northwest region. Officials say the armed men entered the town of Nuna around midnight aboard 4x4 vehicles and motorbikes, brandishing heavy machine guns and letting loose about 60 inmates said to be the entire prison population. The militants also ransacked offices and set fire to prison vehicles before making their escape. The raid comes after the insurgents killed at least 12 people in northern Burkina Faso, most of them members of a volunteer militia. The country is battling a jihadist insurgency that's been spreading across the Sahel over the past decades. A military government seized power in January and ousted the president there, blaming him for failing to tackle the jihadist insurgency. Tanzania's President Samia Hassan has held an emergency meeting of her cabinet over price hikes of fuel in the country. The country's energy regulator, Energy and Water Utilities Regulatory Authority, last week announced record high fuel prices. The cabinet meeting in the coastal city of Dar es Salaam was attended by Prime Minister Kassim Majaliwa, the Ministers of Energy and Finance, among others, according to a statement from the President's office. The President Hassan is directing those present to find an immediate solution to the rising fuel prices in the country. Meanwhile, the recent hike in the cost of fresh and smoked fish across Lake Chad may not be unconnected to insecurity, as well as the conflict between fishermen and residents of the riverine communities. Our next report examines the hike in the prices of these food items and efforts being made to address the situation.
This is Gashua, the headquarters of Bade Local Government Council and one of the major suppliers of fish in the Lake Chad area. For over 5 decades, smoked fish has been transported to many parts of the country in large quantities, with over 3,000 vendors involved in the business. But a hike in the price of fish is creating serious scarcity. It is a tradition that fishermen pay a certain sum of money to host riverine communities before casting their nets to fish. But the recent refusal by fishermen to comply with the order has brought conflict between the two parties.
Every community has its river, but the fishermen came in without permission to fish. We made a case, and it was agreed that a certain amount of money should be paid by them before fishing. but not all the fishermen have been keeping to the agreement. The dispute, which has lasted for about 35 years, has claimed many lives. During the reign of May Sali, we were asked to pay certain fee as fishermen, and we have been complying. Whenever we make payment, we are issued receipts.
To ensure peaceful coexistence in the communities, a civil society group in peace building under the name Hope Interactives, with support from another group known as Managing Conflict in Northern Nigeria, are here to sign an agreement between the fishermen and the communities, marking the end of the conflict.
The project has mandated us to, bring these communities together, the Gashua community. They came together, we brought them. A dialogue platform has been set up, being chaired by persons responsible, that is the water owners and the fishers. And they have faced several advocacies ranging from the Emirates and other key stakeholders to ensure this very issue has brought to a logical conclusion.
As government and groups mediate on the lingering conflict between the fishermen and the host communities, buyers are optimistic that the hike in the price of fish would soon come down.
Finally, the Nigerian Red Cross Society is asking for more donations from the government and private individuals as it provides humanitarian assistance to residents of the nation's capital during the rainy season. This call for more donations were made at the commemoration of the Day of the Red Cross in the nation's capital by the Director of Programs for the Nigerian Red Cross Society, Mr. Adeyemo Adebayo. And as the rains come with their usual flooding across the nation's capital, some Red Cross volunteers speak on the challenges they face in providing humanitarian services in times of emergency. Our correspondent, Kayla Megwa, reports.
It is International Red Cross Day, a day that celebrates one of the largest and oldest humanitarian societies in the world. And this year, the Red Cross is 159 years old. The Abuja chapter is having a day of games to commemorate this year's celebration, which is focused on spreading the message of kindness to all people in whatever way possible, either as a government or as a private individual. Providing humanitarian service in Nigeria comes with its peculiar challenges, as expressed by the Society's Director of Programs. And he makes an urgent plea to the government and the National Assembly.
The government they have given us space. They are the one who established by domesticating Geneva Conventions. So after domestication, they passed lower and upper legislative chamber. They passed the Act of Parliament that established Red Cross. We are currently reviewing the Act. So we want the lower and upper legislative chambers to give it a speedy hearing. That is one. We want them to give us a certificate of occupancy where we need land, so that the trailers carrying all this is not just small, like 1 hectare of land, so that egress and ingress of the trailers or heavy-duty vehicle can come in and go out in these wire houses.
As a movement driven solely by needs of the most urgent in distress, the Red Cross relies heavily on volunteers, numbering 97 million worldwide, over 800,000 of which are in Nigeria. We speak with a few of them on their challenges and motivations.
There was one time there was a heavy flood in Lugbe, and they called us around 2 a.m. Before NEMA could get there, was around 3 a.m. And we responded with personal cars. So if you can imagine what volunteers are going through in FCT. So had it been we have ambulances around and ready to volunteer, many people will be saved.
Someone like me now, I always, I don't hesitate when there's a need of blood. I always donate blood for anybody. We don't have to know the person we are donating to. Once they say it's an emergency, we respond. We don't care about the time. What we know is we are saving a life.
It's been a day of fun and games for the staff of the Red Cross Nigeria, but the amount of humanitarian work done by these volunteers is unparalleled across the world. And today's celebration of World Red Cross Day comes with a clarion call to both the government and private individuals to be humankind, donate as much as possible to ensure that this service to humanity continues. Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
A call we all must heed indeed. With that said, on Network Africa, thank you so much for watching. I'm Joker Rogers.